This conference will now be recorded.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we have Teresa Zlotic from Literacy Minnesota taking us through the Proctor training today. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming in this kind of busy week as you may be having kids come home from school or getting ready for holidays. So as Christine said, we are going to focus on proctoring. I'm going to just go over a few of the things that we talked about in the second training around different tasks that you would do, just to make sure that you all, there was a lot of information in that one. So just to see if there's any lingering questions, to make sure you actually got it. So I'm going to actually be asking you questions, and you can either chat the answers to me or unmute and say the answers, whatever you feel most comfortable with. There's only 32 of us on the call, so that's not too many. But so we'll be kind of going over again, just making sure you know how to create those learner accounts. We will be spending time on the proctoring, which we didn't talk about before. We'll look at then a few of the reports that you would look at as a proctor. And then I don't actually think we will look at the curricula. I forgot to take that off. And then just a reminder of where the resources are. So just to refresh your memory, Northstar currently has 14 assessments, and of those 14, 13 now have instructor-led curriculum. And I don't remember if it happened before or after I spoke with you, but recently one of the curriculum was completed, the 13th, and that was information literacy. So that is now available. And then we have 6 of the self-directed online learning. So people often call those the practice lessons. And I heard today, I have to verify this, but I heard from my team that the Excel, which I thought wouldn't be done till March, may be done earlier than that. So that's exciting news. And then of course there's the learner management system and the reports that will generate for you, as well as what learners are able to see. Does anyone remember what grade level Northstar is written for? We intentionally, Literacy Minnesota works with people on literacy, so we intentionally wrote it at the lowest grade level we could, 4th. Oh yes, good. You guys have good memories. Thank you for that. So it is written at a 4th grade reading level, which would be considered about an intermediate English language learner level. So I'm assuming that you all have access to your Northstar admin portal at this point. If not, please talk to Christine. And so you should have gotten an email from Northstar. You should be able to get into the admin portal. For those of you who are proctors, which I'm assuming is all of you, that email from Northstar should have had a little tutorial on being a proctor. That was maybe a 20-25 minute video. And then you had a quiz. Once you complete that quiz and answer the questions correctly, you're given a proctor pin. So everyone, all of you proctors should have your own unique proctor pin. And so you want to, I'll show you where to find that, but you want to also keep that private. That is something that's unique to you. And it's definitely not something you want to share with anyone who's taking an assessment, because should someone learn your proctor pin, they can then just enter it and it won't really be a proctored assessment, even though the system is reading it as such. And Christine, I think you meant that chat to go to everyone. It just came to me. I just want to let you know that. Thanks. So once you have your proctor pin, once you have your password to get into the Northstar admin portal, for proctor, well, just in general, I would personally bookmark that admin portal page. You can always log in at our Northstar homepage too, but sometimes it's easier just to have that admin portal bookmarked. But just to remind you, in case you haven't done it in a while, to log into our Northstar homepage, you go to the digitalliteracyassessment.org, and then let's see if I'm logged in or not. No, that wasn't the right one. Let's see. All right, so then in the upper right-hand corner, you see the login button, and you click on that, and that's where you would enter your email address, your password, and then just log in. Now for you, you should just have one testing location. I have several, but you should just have one. And then when you open it up, you come to this landing page that is underneath the Northstar logo, and then where mine says demo, it would have your library name. And you can see this is your Proctor pin should be here. So if you ever forget your Proctor pin, you can find it right here under your library name under this tab. So we'll talk more about using the Proctor pin, but just to let you know that that is where it is, always in yellow. You can also find it on under the Assessments tab, again in yellow. So just as a refresher, I want to talk about adding a new learner. So we know that we have to go to our admin portal. I'm going to actually just go back there. And oops, trying to get past the controls here on my screen. Where in your admin portal do you find, what tab in the blue navigation bar do you go to add a new learner? Anyone remember where you go? I'll show it here in a second. I think I will show it here in a second. Learners, yes, very good. Okay, and then under Learner tab, you go to, what do you do next? Let's say I want to create tags before I enter the learners. Where do I go to do that? So I'm here on the Learners tab. Manage tags, right, next to where it says new. Go to Manage Tags, I enter whatever tag name I want here, just type it in, and then press Create Tag. Okay, so now I have all these tags at my beck and call, and they're alphabetical, as you can see. So now I want to go back and add a learner. What do I click on to do that? Invite new learner, very good. So here I put in first name, last name, an email address if they have one, or I might have to create one for them. And then just remember to add a tag, you just have to click in the rectangle. And Sarah, I see you're having some technical difficulties. I got the chat you sent to me, so you can just send them to me if you want, and I can read them. That's Christine, I don't know. Sarah's saying she can't select everyone in the chat. I don't know if that's something you can help with on your end. I am seeing it to me, so at least I can get them. Thank you, Christine. All right, so you can enter as many tags as you want. Again, just click again in the box and they come up. And then you would create the learner, and that's how you would go about that. Or invite learner, I should say. How about if I want to add like let's say I have a whole group of people starting a class. How can I add people in bulk? Import, that's right. So you would create a spreadsheet. Again, you'd have those 3 columns, right? You'd have first name, last name, email, 3 different columns. And then you'd come here and click on import, and then you would, it would upload it for you and create all those learners. And then you would have to add the tags after, because you can't, unfortunately, you can't at this point put the tags on the spreadsheet. So to add them after, you come and you would just click in the appropriate boxes of people that you wanted to tag. And then over here on the right-hand side, it will tell you that you pick 3 and you assign whatever tag you want to assign to them. So that would be how you can do that quicker in bulk. Great, well, I'm I'm very impressed at how much you all remember. That is wonderful. So I'm going to just kind of skip through this because you all saw it. Oh, does anyone remember how to manually, well, it kind of shows you, but so to manually activate an account, let's say the person that's you're creating a learning account for can't, either because of their digital skills or perhaps their just reading ability, can't use email. So you can use the lightning bolt, and then you can create a password for them so that they have access to the system. So again, if you're here under learners, if we have a new learner, which has this little clock by it, that means that they haven't actually activated it. They haven't created a password yet. Then you can go over to that lightning bolt right here, click on it, and you can activate it with their permission, and then it will have you create a password. Okay, so great. So let's then talk about one thing to make sure you remember how to, so you all should have access to the learner dashboard for yourself so that you could use the self-directed online learning if you wanted to, but you can definitely see what an example of what your learners will see. So to remind you, if I'm in my admin portal, how do I go from being Teresa, the proctor, to Teresa the learner? Does anyone remember that? So I want to switch. Yep, you click on your name and then you choose the Northstar Online Learning. That's right. And then I'm in the system as Teresa the learner. I will be in a second. And then to switch back, I again go to the drop-down arrow by my name, and I go to my admin portal, and I'm back, as Teresa the proctor. I have to keep moving around the controls here, so that's what I'm doing sometimes. All right, so then let's talk about proctoring. But first, let me just remind you, these are the Northstar Online Learning modules that we have currently. So we have 6 now. And so sometimes, people will say, well, I can't find the practice lessons, and that's most likely because there just aren't any for that topic yet. Here are all of the assessments. So when you proctor, you can proctor on any of these assessments. To remind you, a lot of times, if you don't know what someone's digital literacy levels are, you probably would want to start with these first 3, the basic computer, internet basics, and using email. And then, when you're proctoring, you're hoping that they'll pass. They may not. So why do we use these assessments? First, we will give, just to remind you, we'll give the assessment as a pretest, and typically that's unproctored. And that's, mostly to see what someone knows and what they still need to learn. And then once they've done the educational piece, however, they either in a class or on the self-directed online learning or a combo, then they'll do the assessment again, and that is when you'll proctor, usually. People can only get a certificate if they pass the test and it's a proctored test assessment. So just remember that if someone takes an assessment unproctored and they want the certificate, you would recommend having them take it again proctored. You can also use the assessments to, prepare your own staff. All of those of you who might be teaching, actually, taking the assessments is a great way to make sure that you're ready to teach. So this is kind of how proctoring process often goes. So you will first of all need to have, just want to make sure you realize that each of your libraries has a site-specific Northstar URL. So when someone takes an assessment on that URL, automatically all their information will be stored in your Northstar admin portal, and it will be specific to your library. So whenever someone's taking an assessment, you want them to use that specific URL to your library. And so there's a couple ways that they can take an assessment, and I think I want to first talk about this. So we talked about, why you would proctor assessments, and you can proctor assessments in person, have someone come into the library and do the proctoring there, or you can do it remotely. And how libraries often do proctoring, from what I've, in talking to other libraries, they'll sometimes have a computer lab that is open at, if it's open every day, that's great, but sometimes it's open just specific days, and you'll have someone in the lab who is a proctor and is available to do proctoring. So maybe it's Tuesdays and Thursdays from, 10 to 12. And then someone will come in and they might be doing some self-directed online learning, and they might want to then proctor, and you can, do that as people become available. Oftentimes, of course, if you are holding a class, the instructor will proctor the assessment for the whole class. You can also have, I've seen libraries where they'll have people make appointments. So there are a pool of proctors, and they have available hours, and the patrons will make an appointment and then come in to the proctoring. And this will sometimes be done remotely as well, or you could have remote proctoring hours too. So it's pretty flexible in terms of how you might do the proctoring, or you might have someone just available in the library at any time who can do proctoring. Kind of up to you and how your library is organized and your staffing capabilities. So when someone comes in to do proctoring, there's a couple of things that you need to have in your library in order for them to do in-person proctoring. First of all, you need to have, a device, right? And it should be a computer, a laptop, or Chromebook. As we talked about in the past, Northstar isn't 100% compatible with cell phones or tablets. We are changing that, but for the moment, you want to have someone, if at all possible, take the test on a computer, a laptop, or a Chromebook. Because Northstar has audio, which many people use, I would highly recommend that your library have headphones, or if you don't provide headphones, have the patrons use headphones, because otherwise it's going to be very disturbing to anyone within hearing range. So then you're going to also, before someone even comes in, you want to have that site-specific URL bookmarked on those computers that you're going to be using for proctoring. And that's just going to make the whole process much quicker. If they don't have to type in that URL, if you don't have to find it. So if it's bookmarked on the computer, that's going to help them a lot. And so those are kind of then you're also going to want to have your Northstar testing code of conduct available to you. So when it comes time, you have it there so you can read it to the test takers. And Sarah put in the chat that in Youngstown, the assessments have issues if the browser has add pop-up blocker on too. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. That is true. So you want to remove those pop-up blockers when people are taking the assessments. So again, let me show you where to find that site-specific URL that you want to have bookmarked on your computer, on the computers that people are going to be using to take the assessments. So if you go into your admin portal, you can find it in 2 different places, the same places you find your proctor pin. So here under assessments, you can see where it says assessment launch page here. This is that assessment launch page, that site-specific URL. And also under your organizational name next to the Northstar logo, this bullet number 2 is also that page. And you can see that when I go to it, I am at the assessments, and I am in my site-specific URL. So it says demo, that's the name of mine, and it has my address. So that's where you want people to be taking your assessments from your launch page. So if you are working one-on-one with somebody, they would come in and you would, have them come in or click on that URL or click on that bookmark page, go to that page, and they're going to be seeing this. So now, if you're just working with one person or two people, here you can actually add in your Proctor pin, that Proctor pin that we saw, this one, the yellow one, manually. So again, you do not want to give this to the test taker. You want to do this yourself. And so when you enter it, make sure that you're kind of shielding it from the person who's looking, and that you're doing it, not them. And Amanda asked a very good question. Does the pin change every time? No, it is the same. So the pin is the same. If for some reason your pin gets compromised, you can change it. And the way to do that is if you're in your admin portal and you go to your name, the drop-down arrow by your name and your personal profile, you can see here that it says generate new pin. So if again, you accidentally gave out your Proctor pin and test takers are using it on their own, you can generate a new pin, and the one that you currently have will be obsolete, and then you'll get a new pin. But otherwise, you would always have the same one. So it makes it remembering it, fairly easy. So here, it's a bit not obvious, but when you are going to enter your Proctor pin, when you're the one entering your Proctor pin, look for the oval where the word pin is in it. So you'd come over here to the right, and where it says validate computer via pin, you'd click on that. Then in this blank oval, you would enter your pin number and you would authorize it. And then you can see that the test taker's screen went from kind of that gray to green, this green ribbon, and it says Proctor mode is on. So you want to be sure that it says Proctor mode is on before you have them start the test. Now, prior to starting the assessment, there's a couple of things that you're going to want to do. You're going to want to check their ID to make sure that they are who they say they are. You're going to want to make sure they're not using any notes, they don't have someone helping them, they're not looking at their phone throughout the test, of course. And you're going to read them that Northstar Testing Code of Conduct, which basically says that they're not going to cheat. And you can find the Code of Conduct in your admin portal. I should have put a link here. In your admin portal under Resources. So you can either read it verbatim, or you can, paraphrase it, whatever seems best for this test taker. But the easiest way to find it, I think, is under Other Resources. And then here are those codes of conduct. And there's actually one for the test taker, and then there's one for you, which you would learn the Proctor Code of Conduct when you took that little quiz. So here's the test taker code of conduct. Again, you kind of just, number one is telling you about acceptable forms of ID, and then 2 through 8 are just telling you kind of what you will say to the test taker. So once you've checked the ID, you've made sure there's no notes or anything near them. You've read them the code of conduct. They've agreed to it. Then you are ready, and you've entered your Proctor pin. Then you're ready to have them start taking the assessment. And so you would, I do want to show you one thing. If this person is in your learner management system, you want to have them logged in. So you can see where it says logged in and it has my name on there. If they, and that's partly because I logged in already. So let me show you what this will look like when I go here. It's a little tricky because I'm in a couple of different places at once. But I'm going to get in there a different way just to get back to that screen that we saw. All right, so here we are. We're going to put in the Proctor pin. Proctor mode is on, but then you can see there is no learner name here. And it says if you have a learner account, log in now. So if someone has been signed up to in your learner management system, I would highly recommend that you do have them log in. And the reason for that is then, all this information is going to be associated with that login. You can see down below that they can, if they don't have a learner management account, they can just enter their first name and last name, which is okay. It will still, show up under that name. But let's say their name was James and they took one assessment and they wrote James Nelson. And the next time they took an assessment, they wrote Jim Nelson. Northstar would see that as two different people. So it's going to kind of maintain the integrity more of your reporting system if you have them log in. So again, they would, click on the login now. They would enter their email address and that password that they had created or you had created. And then you can see that they're logged in. This warning in red here, that's just because I am also a proctor, so they won't see this warning. So you have them logged in, you're ready to proctor. You would have them scroll down. Here are all the assessments. And then they would click on an assessment. Now, presumably if you're proctoring this, it means they have hopefully taken a pre-assessment in the past, so they're kind of knowledgeable about what the Northstar assessments are like. But in case this is our first time taking a Northstar assessment, you are allowed as a proctor to help them navigate the Northstar system. So by that I mean you can tell them what certain buttons do, how to go back and review something. You cannot help them answer the questions. And believe me, you'll get people asking you all the time, like, what does this mean? What should I answer? What should my answer be? And you just have to say as a proctor, I can't help you with the test. I'm just here to help you with any technical issues you might have and to watch you take the test. So just remember, just to show you, I'm going to click on one of these. You'll hear some cello music at the beginning. That's testing the audio. And I will try and quickly turn that off. And then just kind of show you what they look like in case you haven't seen them. So the person will come here. They'll hear the music. Hopefully you're hearing that. And then they go on to the orientation.
Let's take a minute.
Now you can have people go through the orientation. It's about 5 minutes. If for some reason they want to skip it, I mean, if they've seen it before, they can skip it, no problem. If you feel like they would do better if you just talk to them about the assessment, if this is their first time, feel free to skip it and just kind of go over again the buttons in here. So if you skip the orientation, they'd come here, tells you how many questions there's going to be, and then they can start it. And here,
select all of the internet browser icons, then click next.
On this page, if you want to, before they start, you can just remind them, if they don't know the answer, they can click I don't know. They can always come back to it by using the menu button up here with the 3 dots and the 3 lines in the top right-hand corner. They can replay the audio here with this left-facing arrow and the speaker. They can make the audio, speed it up or slow it down here by clicking on this kind of gray bar that comes up if you hover over that button. They are able to turn on closed captioning. I believe, I'm not seeing it, but I have a lot of stuff in my way here. right here on the CC button. If they are wanting to use closed captioning, best for them to turn it on at the first slide of the assessment, because there's sometimes videos embedded in the assessments where if you try to click on the closed captioning on those pages, on those slides, you can, but you have to click on the closed captioning in the YouTube video itself, not down here. So, you know, you might want to tell people that, or you just want to know that, I guess. And of course, they can turn the sound off if they want to with the speaker, and they can expand the screen with the, you know, the double arrows. So you may, if you feel like this person needs some help again in going through the assessment, you're definitely able to talk to them about all these functions in the assessments. That's completely legit to help them in that way. Any questions as before we go on into the proctoring? Okay, so then you'd have them start the assessment. You need to be watching them take the assessment throughout the whole process, again, to make sure that they're not using any outside information to answer the questions. Now, let's say you you're proctoring a whole class. It's not very practical to go around to, you know, 12 different computers and enter your proctor pin and have everyone waiting for you to do that. Or if you're proctoring remotely, of course, you can't do that. So there is another way to proctor that Northstar has created to make it pretty easy in those situations. So if you're in person, you have kind of the same setup. You'd have a computer lab. You can proctor as many people in person as you want, as long as you can see all of them. So if you have a computer lab, you have 12 computers and you can kind of monitor them all, that's fine. So the way to do that would be, you have everyone at their desk, or not at their desk, at their computer. And I want to, I'll just go back to, let's see if we can go back to the, not sure how far it will let us go. No, it won't. Okay. So if you have someone who's ready to take their assessment, they have got to that site-specific URL, and they are kind of waiting for you to proctor. Then what they're going to be seeing is what we saw before. This, except we're going to have the proctor mode off. So this is what they'll be seeing. They've logged in. And now you want to turn on proctoring for this whole room of people, or people who are remote. And there's a few things you have to do to set up remote for remote learners first. But just to kind of walk you through this, let's say this large group of people that are in person, you're going to go to your admin portal, and you're going to go to the assessments tab, and you're going to click on Start New Proctor Session. So under here, under Proctoring on the left, you're going to click on Start New Proctor Session. And you're going to hopefully see something happen here, which should. Let me just log in again. All right. So you can see now I started the proctoring session, and it's basically like I'm opening the computer lab doors, right? And I'm saying, I am ready to start proctoring people. And my class of people is waiting for me. And what they then see is the same, doesn't look anything different to them. So now you're going to instruct everyone in the room to click on Join Proctor Mode. And then you can see that it says for them that they're waiting for you to respond to them. So then you're going to go back here, and you can see that it says, oh, hey, learner Teresa is waiting for me to start proctoring. So, if you have a whole classroom, you can wait till everyone shows up here, and then you can start the proctoring for all of them. So you just click on Start Proctoring. What they then see on their end should be that the proctor mode is green and it says proctor mode is on. So once everyone has that green ribbon, then you're ready to proctor the whole group. And Mary had a question, do they show up there because they are learners for your organization? They show up there because they have clicked on Join Proctor Mode. So anyone who is at your at your site, so they've logged in, they've used that site-specific URL that's associated with your library, and they've clicked on Join Proctor Mode, that's when they show up in that virtual computer lab. So when then you are done proctoring, you would just click on Stop Proctoring to end it. And you always want to stop proctoring when it's done, because you don't want to leave a proctoring session open so that someone else could come and take an assessment that isn't actually proctored. So any other questions about just kind of using that group function? And then we'll talk about specifically how to do this for remote people. And then once you're completely done with everybody, you would click on the end proctoring here in gold to end that session. Okay, so if you're gonna, so there is one other way that a learner can take an assessment. There's using that Northstar URL, or they might go in through, let's say they're practicing on the, they've been practicing on in the Northstar Online Learning, and then they want to take an assessment, and they're in your computer lab, and they say, excuse me, Proctor, I'd like to proctor an assessment now. And they are at their dashboard. They can take an assessment from their dashboard. And so what that looks like is they would be, they would log in to their dashboard. Initially, they're in there for whatever they're, studying. And so then they're here on this page. And let's say they want to take the basic computer skills assessment. Excuse me. They would just click on Take Assessment. And then again, you can see that goes directly to your site-specific Northstar assessment URL. So it should have your library name here where it says, mine says demo, should have your address. So then they are still being recorded to your organization. So those are the two ways that learners can get to the correct assessment. If you're going to be doing remote proctoring, the person that's taking the assessment also needs to have a device on their end. And again, it should be a computer, laptop, or Chromebook. Now that person may not have anything beside a mobile device. They can still take the assessments, but there are some drag and drop questions that they just can't currently do. So as long as you know that they won't be able to get those questions right, if that's acceptable to your program, you can allow them to do that. If not, you might not be able to do remote proctoring with that person. They will also need to have the ability to do, whatever video chat program you have, so whatever the library would be using. And then they would need a webcam so that you can see them. You need to see them taking the test and making sure, again, no one's helping them, check their, have them show you their environment, that there's no notes around. You want to make sure that they know how to use the chat feature. Either they can, if there's just one person, they can talk to you through the microphone. But if there's multiple test takers, you want to make sure that they know how to use the chat feature. And then you want them to know how to mute their microphones if they're using the audio. Again, it would be very disruptive if multiple people are hearing that. When you do remote proctoring, Northstar says you can have up to 10 people at a time that you're proctoring. Again, as long as you can see them all on your screen. So sometimes with Teams, for example, you can't see 10 people. So as long as you can see them all at one time, you can be proctoring all of them. They don't have to be doing the same assessment. They don't have to start at the same time. What I know some libraries do is they will have a breakout room. So when someone comes in and you have to talk to them about, the testing code of conduct and everything, showing their ID, rather than showing it to everybody in the group, you'd have two proctors probably, one watching everyone take the assessment and one going into that breakout room with that new person and checking their ID and going over the testing code of conduct before they start. So that's how I've heard people do remote proctoring for groups. So to prepare your test takers for remote test taking, we do have a remote test taker checklist, which is what I pretty much just showed you on the last slide, that you can give to them prior to this to make sure that they're ready. Another thing they obviously need to have is internet service. And you also want to give them some kind of support to access you in case the video platform doesn't work. We've all had that happen. So however you would normally interact with them over phone, email, WhatsApp, whatever you do, so that they have a way to reach you in case they can't get the Zoom platform to work. And then you also want to make sure that they're comfortable using your video conferencing platform before they start taking the assessment. You don't want someone to be anxious about using your video platform and not really focusing on the assessment itself. So just running through the controls quickly if you need to. So you're going to, have them log into the video platform, check their ID, like I said, read in that testing code of conduct. And then since they probably don't have the your site-specific URL bookmarked on their computer, you can send that URL to them through the chat. And that's the easiest way, instead of having them type it in. These are people who, some of them are pretty low digital literacy. So you want to just send them that in the chat and tell them to, click with their mouse on that. And then you would go through activating the proctoring session like we talked about, and then start the whole process. And this is going through that. And once you're done, just again, remembering either to have, if it's in person and just with a few, which is a one-on-one, making sure on that computer to turn off proctoring, or if you're doing it with a larger number of people, to turn it off on your end in the admin portal. So if someone takes an assessment and they pass while it's proctored, they get a certificate. And this is what the certificates look like. You can see that here it would say the learner name, where it says Colorado Rocky, and then where it says by demo, that would have your library name. It would say what assessment they passed and the date they passed it. And then the date is also, although this date is different than this date, I'm not sure, that should be the same date. The date here, and then the proctor name here, and here's, you could sign it if you were gonna, you can either print this out for them, or you can send it to them as a PDF via email. And so the place to do that is if you go into your admin portal. So you have to do this, give them the certificate. They can't get it themselves. And so you would go into your admin portal, and you can go into learners, and for that specific person who took the assessment and passed it, you can look at their name, find their name here, click on their name, and then you can see over here on the right, it will say certificate. And so you'd click on that, and that would give you that certificate to print or to email them as a PDF. If, like in this case, this person has earned 2 certificates, if I wanted to just put both of those assessments on one, I could click on the plus, and then I could list them all. Most people, though, do want a separate certificate for every assessment they passed. It's kind of sort of a pride thing. So let's see, and Kelly said, can a learner access their account at a different library offering Northstar? Yes, so whenever, as long as the person has access to a device and internet, they can access their learner account from wherever they are, from home, from another library, from work. But they would still be, if they were in the learner management system at Bluffton, they could physically be at the Finlay Library, but they would still be in the Bluffton account system, if that makes sense. So wherever they've been added as a learner, that's where all their records go. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. I think that's kind of it about proctoring. It's really quite easy. Any questions you have or anything you want to see me do again before we just kind of look at some of the reports that you as proctors might want to know about? Okay, so there are two places where you can see assessment scores. And sometimes you might want to be seeing, individuals' assessment scores. Sometimes you might want to be looking at a group of people. And so we'll take a look at those. And Sarah asked, what doesn't work with remote proctoring? Yeah, any of the questions that require you to take a mouse and drag something doesn't work on a mobile device. Even if you have a keyboard attached to like your tablet, it still doesn't work at this time. And Northstar is actually working on coding to make it possible to do those things in the future. We'll probably roll out various aspects of that over the course of 2022. So, but if you have a question where, so there's one like in the email assessment where it gives you, I think, 5 different parts to an email and asks you to drag them to the right location. So one would be who the email is going to, one is the title of the email, one is like the greeting, one is the body of the email, and people are supposed to take those and drag them to the right places. It doesn't allow you to do that on a mobile device. So that's what I mean by the drag and drop options. So you yourself can go through the assessments and see like, okay, which of these questions are drag and drop that can be done on a tablet or a cell phone if you wanted to. If they have a desktop computer at home, they're fine. If they have a Chromebook or a laptop, they're fine. So we'll work on all those devices. Yeah, 100%, work 100%. All right, great questions. So let's look, so there's 2 places that you can find information about assessments for, more individual level rather than the library-wide level. So if we go into the Learner tab in your admin portal, you can find some information about assessments here. So here, if I'm going to get to just mine, because I know what's in there. Here you can see these icons next to everybody's names. And if you hover over them, it tells you what assessment this icon stands for. If there is, like in Colorado Rocky, if there is a hexagon around the icon, that means that this person has passed this assessment. But if it is in black and white, that means that it was unproctored. And then down here, you can see if this purple one, it means that if it's colored, if the hexagon is colored, that means that it's been passed and proctored. So you can quickly see at a glance, let's say you have a new person coming into the lab that you have not yet met. You can quickly look them up and see if they've passed any assessments, if they're familiar with the Northstar assessments or not. Then if you want to see, just let's say you have a group of people and you want to see how they've done on Internet Basics, you can click on that icon in any person's row And it will show you what this group of people have done. So you can see if they've taken the assessment, how well they did on the assessment, and if they've done any of that self-directed online learning practice. And so that might give you a quick glance at where the people in this group might be. Now, again, if you click on anyone's name, you're going to see that report that I showed you briefly before. But here it's going to show you the modules. These are the assessments. Again, if you hover over them, it will tell you what they are. It will show you under best score if how many times someone tried to take this assessment. If they've passed, it's in green. If they have not passed, it's in yellow. And then under practice lessons, you can just see if the person has done any of the self-directed online learning or not. Here it tells you if they've earned a badge or a certificate. If you click on the I next to their name, and this is kind of all review for you, you'll see what standards they missed and if they've done any of the practice for them or not, the self-directed online learning. And then at the bottom, you can see when they took that assessment, who proctored it, and their score. Again, if we go into the I, you can see at the very bottom which of the questions they missed. And so there you can see if there are any patterns. Are they missing them because there was, asked for 5 answers and they only gave 2? Or are they not understanding a concept that you can maybe direct them to in the self-directed online learning? Or if you're going to have a class, teach them that more. And if you click on any of these questions, it will bring up the actual question for you. You can't share this with the test taker, the learner. You couldn't go over this and say, okay, now the answer here is whatever it would be. But it just gives you some insight as to what might be confusing them on this assessment. So the other reports you can find are under the assessments tab here. And so we looked at, we were looking initially at this left-hand side of the page where all your proctoring information is. But on the right-hand side of the page, you can see assessment results. So you can look at everyone in the library. You can look at only those that have been proctored, only those that have passed. You have a couple of options, or just by a particular person. And I want to remind you that with any of the reports in Northstar, there's always this modify filter option. And that lets you look at either various reports have different filters, but they all let you look by those tags that you had added. So if you only want to look at the people who are in your Friday AM class, you can click on that and that will then apply filter, and that will narrow down your list. So in this case, only one person has passed this assessment in a proctored environment from that class. And you can see that if I take that filter out and just look at everybody, there's a lot more people. You can also add a variety of tags. So if you want to look at someone who is in that Friday AM class, let's do all results, and who also maybe is in cohort 3, so they have meet both those conditions, you can apply the filter, and you'll see that in this case nobody meets both those conditions, but that might help you narrow something down. But if you want to say, I'm interested in people who were in my Friday class, and you click on this plus where it says or other tags, or the Monday afternoon class, and you apply a filter, then you're going to see a lot more people, because you're looking at the 2 variables. They can be either or rather than and. Hopefully that makes sense. So, but on this page, then you're seeing who passed the assessment, what was their assessment, what was their score, here's a certificate. You can always download this into a spreadsheet. And again, you can click on the person's name and get some more information as to what questions they missed, what standards they need to improve on. Any questions about those reports or how to play around in there? Definitely feel free to create fake learners and practice, and tag them various ways, practice running the reports. You're not going to ruin the system in any way by creating fake learners, and then you can get rid of them when you are done practicing. So I find that that's just really helpful. Also, the first time you proctor, again, I would highly recommend that you proctor with one of your coworkers, because if you're nervous proctoring, the test taker is going to pick up on that, and then they're probably nervous already. It's going to make them even more nervous. So if you can practice the proctoring with one of your coworkers, it's going to make it's easy to do, but just going to get that routine down. So, so you have that. Before we just again look at the resources, what other questions do you have about proctoring, or what makes you nervous about proctoring, or any just thoughts about Northstar in general? Because we will end early. So if you have other questions just in general about Northstar, we have time for that. All right. Well, I know sometimes it takes you a while to write in the chat, so I'll keep an eye out for those. But again, just to remind you that in your admin portal, you do have access to a lot of resources. So if you forget what I tell you about proctoring, you can go to the resources tab in your admin portal. And here in the middle, where it says Proctoring Assessments, these videos talk to you about proctoring. And so if you prefer learning via video, there's several here of how to do the proctoring. And then if you want to quickly find in the Northstar manual the piece on proctoring, you can click there and it will kind of jump to, well, actually it just goes to the manual, I see. But here, part 2, this is all about Northstar assessments. And so you can see that the proctoring assessments is there first. Other things that you have access to, if you have questions about proctoring that are, you can look in the FAQs, and there's a section on assessments here. And if you go to the quick start guide, you can see there's a quick start guide for proctors. So again, that's specific to doing the proctoring. I will say though that even though I was talking with one of my coworkers the other day, and we do spend a lot of time talking about proctoring, especially because when the remote proctoring became available, it was very new to people. But really, proctoring is quite easy, and it's pretty easy to pick up. And it's actually very, what I hear from many people who do proctoring is watching someone take a test really gives you insight as to how they're thinking and what they're not understanding. So just seeing how they answer questions sometimes can give you some insights as to what this person might what might be confusing this person. And then it's very, very rewarding when someone does pass and gets the certificate, because as you probably heard me say, I've had people who will want to buy frames and put their certificates up on their walls. People have started crying because it just meant so much to them. A lot of times people will give me, high fives when I was in person. So it is a very exciting moment. People feel very proud, and they're, it's great to be a part of that, just as a bystander. If for some reason something isn't working right when you're proctoring, for example, I just had a client email me saying, suddenly we're not allowed to proctor. We've always proctored. What's going on? You can always reach me, but to be honest, I am often presenting, and so I'm not gonna be the quickest to get back to you sometimes. I definitely will, but it might take me a day or two. So if you need a quicker answer, you can go into your resources page and go to this create a support ticket, and that will generate an email that goes to the whole Northstar team. And then, you know, anyone who can answer it first available will answer it. If it has to come to me, it will, and I will get it. But that just kind of, if you're having some problems with something not working, or if you have a question about something, that's going to get you the best answer quickest. Any other questions? I think that's pretty much all I wanted to tell you about proctoring today. Unless you have any thoughts.
Going. Teresa, thank you so much for everything that you've done to get us through this process. And every time I take a look at that resource tab, I am always finding something new, and we're trying to curate that a little bit for the folks in Ohio. We made a playlist of the quick start videos, and I'll have to share that with you so that folks know, 15 minutes. I can do 15 minutes and get a good grasp of some of this stuff.
Right.
But thank you again to everyone who attended today, especially those who have been with us through all 4 webinars. Again, a lot of time in preparation, but really we think that this is going to save you time with the interactions that you're already doing with your patrons regarding digital literacy. And thank you for everything that you do for the folks in Ohio to help them become more digitally literate every day. With that, I'm going to end the recording, and if you do have questions, let me know. I can pass them along as needed to Teresa and the digital literacy Northstar team. And thank you again. Have a great holiday. I hope everybody gets a few days of rest and relaxation. All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you all for having me. And yes, great work for people in Ohio. Very excited to hear what you end up doing. And then maybe I'll see you again in the next year.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.